663. All right, let's get into a couple of questions, and then I will break it up in the middle sometime and tell you a little bit about how it's going with our program to help persons with disabilities. So let's take the first question, and it had to do with someone that just listened to episode 562 with Ellen Finkelstein, who is a prolific writer and a PowerPoint expert. And so I made the comment that I don't use PowerPoint in my speeches. So the question is, hey, Tom, well, if you don't use PowerPoint, what do you do? Right? So my method is really powerful, and I'm surprised more people haven't taken taken it and used it. But I just put all the stuff that I'm going to show as visuals on the desktop of my computer. I run a computer from the stage. It's hooked into the sound system, and I can pick and choose whatever things I want off the desktop to display on the screen. And so if my time gets cut, nobody ever notices because they never know what I was going to do. And I don't have to look at the screen and read. You know, a lot of people, they do PowerPoint and they put exactly what they're going to say as bullet points, and then they look at the screen to read them. I mean, that's, you talk about pitiful. That's really pitiful. I mean, I look at the screen occasionally to draw your attention to the screen, but you got to talk to the people, not to your PowerPoint slides. So that's what I do. And then also what happens is a lot of times people will ask me, or when I did corporate speaking, hey, all those those training videos you showed, how do we get those? You know, can we buy those? Well, maybe, let's see. So I had $199 DVD, and they bought that, you know, so I just gave them 2 or 3 of them on screen, and then told them there was 50 of them available. And they said, well, where do we buy them? You know, and sometimes, you know, I was kind of king of back in those days of being able to sell when you're not allowed to sell. And so the meeting planner said, no, you can't sell at the back of the room. Okay, no problem, because I was getting paid to be there. So when somebody came up to me and wanted to buy the videos, I said, well, the meeting planner doesn't allow me to sell here. And so they would go hammer the meeting planner, who would either buy a bunch of them from the budget of the group, or let them purchase them from me. You know, so, but I was clean. I didn't violate any things, you know, I just kind of put the bug in there. So that's just one way to sell when you're not allowed to sell. I have a bunch of ways to do this. Anyway, that's not the question here. Question here is about not using PowerPoint. Now, what you definitely don't want to do is just start talking faster and running through the slides faster, because nobody's going to absorb what you're saying. Nobody's going to appreciate it. And if you're running through the slides and not talking about them, then they feel cheated. So I just use my desktop to display what I want to display. And if the time is cut, then I don't display some of the things, and nobody knows the difference. They don't feel cheated. So that's what I do. And I highly suggest you do too, but I know a lot of people don't have the guts to do it. All right, next question. For my speeches and workshops, I usually set up the room with classroom tables. I've heard you talk about better seating methods. How could I change my seating to make a better presentation? Well, first of all, the material here I learned from and was developed by Dr. Paul Roddy. That's R-A-D-D-E. And I had done over 500 speeches before I learned this. And when you've done 500 professional paid speeches to various audiences, you kind of get a feel for, I mean, I might have told the same story 200-300 times out of that 500. So you get a feel for the reaction of the audience members. And when I changed the seating method that I learned from Dr. Roddy, I would get sometimes 3 times the response on the same story. If it was a funny story or if it was a serious story. On serious stories, you see nodding, or sometimes people would cry, hopefully not because it's just looking